Welcome to the first episode of the Let's Talk podcast. Over the past few weeks, social care has been firmly back in the spotlight following Prime Minister Andy Burnham's speech and the launch of Baroness Casey's big conversation on care. Today, we're asking a more important question. What does it actually mean for the people working in care, providers in care, families, and the future of home care? I'm joined by our Group Managing Director, Nicola Mewse, who has over 25 years' experience leading services and expertise in social care. Welcome, Nicola.
Hey, Mason. Nice to see you. I'm very excited to be on our first podcast.
So, Nicola, what were your first thoughts after listening to the Prime Minister's speech?
Well, look, I was initially really excited. I think it has the potential to be one of the most significant speeches for the care sector in the last however many years. We've heard many previous prime ministers talk about social care, but no one with the level of personal passion and commitment that Andy Burnham showed when he was, referencing his father's care, and he described that journey. And I think so that gave the sector some real reassurance and confidence that this genuinely was something he was prepared to tackle.
And
It
what
suggests that, social care is no longer being treated as secondary behind the NHS, and that he recognises that the two need to work together.
so what really resonated with you then?
I think for me, it was really positive that it increase the political attention on what we have known to be a huge challenge for a long time. I think with that is going to come greater scrutiny, but also potentially greater investment into social care. And I think that the sector might now finally have a stronger voice, that things like the national workforce and funding debates need to be addressed. And commissioners need to be encouraged to think more strategically about how sustainably they can commission social care rather than, what has sometimes been lowest cost procurement.
Was there anything that surprised you?
I don't think I was surprised particularly, although I was pleased that he was talking about the Casey reform and, speeding up that process, recognising that debate and all of the learning from that information needed to be used to shape the reforms that he may be able to put in place.
Was there anything that you felt might have been missing?
Look, I think there's a lot of detail that's missing in any kind of rhetoric that a political individual wants to talk about. I think what was really important for me was that phrase, I think that quote that people are using about carers being the best paid people in society, not the worst. I think that is the piece of the jigsaw that we all need to kind of focus on, because until we can get matched funding with the aspirations of the sector, then care providers themselves can't be the ones to solve this problem.
That leads me on really nicely to a discussion around the care workforce. We've spoken recently to hundreds of care workers through our upcoming report, as you know, or the Inside the Home Care Workforce 2026 report. Without giving too much away, do you think the care workers are finally getting the recognition they deserve?
I don't think, I think people are more aware of the challenges of the home care sector. And I think we've come a long way, I think, since COVID, especially, and the recognition of what a home care worker actually does. But I don't think they are necessarily yet getting the recognition they deserve for the level of responsibility that they hold, and the skills that they hold, and quite how well trained, experienced, and incredibly caring they are, and motivated to look after their service users. I mean, what was really interesting when I was talking to our marketing manager recently about the feedback from our care workforce in this recent survey was actually pay is not the biggest factor that drives people to the sector. It is about the belief that they're doing something good, that they want to make a difference. And yes, pay is important, but it's not necessarily the hourly rate of pay that drives a care worker and motivates them. It's the structure of that pay. It's recognizing that they should be paid a day's wages for a day's work and not the complexities that they've seen in the past, potentially being paid by the minute, being paid by the visit, but not being paid for the time that they're traveling, etc. And we have come a long way in the sector, but there is still a long way to go.
So on that point, what does meaningful recognition actually look like for care workers?
Well, what care workers are telling us is that they want to know that they've got stability in their role. They want to know that they've got security. So they want a contract that is going to give them guaranteed hours, that is going to give them the same kind of rights and expectations of a salaried employee. And they don't always feel like that in the sector. So that combined with all of the added benefits that good employers like Hales would offer, like sick pay schemes, like discounts, like the ability to have funded transport arrangements, that they get good welfare, they get great training and paid qualifications. And that recognition that what they're doing is really important and as important as what the NHS are doing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Fair and sustainable pay, like you mentioned, training, career pathways, and that recognition, all absolutely really important. And proud to say things we're doing here at Hales. Um, what have you learned from leading care teams throughout your career?
I think the most important thing is that transparency, good communication, making people feel involved in the decisions that the organisation is making is really important. But also staying ahead, and you'll be able to talk about this much better than me, but staying ahead of the technology, giving people the tools and the resources they need to do their job really well. So anything that we can do to make it easier for people out on the front line we need to do, and that's where tech or the use of AI and supporting them is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You know my feelings on technology. I think it can be used to solve all of the biggest challenges in the sector, or at least one tool in our tool set, arguably the most powerful tool. Um, One of the ideas that keeps floating around and was hinted at in Prime Minister Andy Burnham's speech was the idea of a national care service. That seems to be generating a lot of discussion again recently. From your perspective, what would success actually look like for a national care service?
I think that's quite a political hot potato that perhaps is I'm not best qualified to speak on. But what I do know is that there needs to be a recognition that the NHS and social care has got to become more integrated. And whether that be with a national care service or not, I don't know. But what I do know is that workforce reform is probably likely to be the biggest medium-term change that we're going to see. We're already seeing greater recognition of care as a skilled profession.
Yeah.
The national workforce framework, similar to parts of the NHS, so that there are stronger expectations around training, qualifications, and career pathways are going to be really important. However, if funding doesn't follow, then providers themselves could face quite significant challenges, wage inflation pressure, and the expectation that we're going to kind of fix these problems single-handedly, and that can't be the case.
Yeah, I completely agree. And do you think the government can actually address the local authorities and commissioners paying providers, or do you think that's a part of the overall care reform that's required?
I think we all recognise that there has to be major reform in how social care is funded, and I think that's where the Casey Commission's big conversation really comes in, because that's the opportunity for everybody who's ever touched the care sector, be it as a user of a recipient of care, or as someone who's cared for a loved one in an unpaid capacity, or as people who are working in the care sector, both on the front line and behind the scenes. and stakeholders that are commissioning care. Everyone needs to contribute to that big conversation so that we can really all start to understand how the reforms might play out and what we need to do to then be able to fund them.
Well, you beat me to the punch that I was going to ask about the big conversation on care next, and we'll pop a link below in the description to the big conversation of care website. But Baroness Casey has launched the big conversation in care. Why, and you've touched on a few points there, but why do you think this public consultation matters?
I think it's the first opportunity, it's certainly in my lifetime that I know of, that everybody has had the opportunity to contribute to the conversation, and that there seems to be a real momentum behind driving change. So I think this is the best opportunity we've ever had as a generation to really influence political thinking and drive those reforms that we so badly need.
This might be a tough question for you to answer, but if you could submit one recommendation yourself, what would it be?
It would be to recognise care workers as a skilled profession, to support providers, to give them training and qualifications that are recognised nationally, that are standardised nationally, that are funded. You know, look at the apprenticeship levy. Is the apprenticeship levy working for social care? I'm not sure it is. Is there a better way of using that money to support the upskilling of the care workforce and recognising the incredible contribution that they make to the wider health and social care environment in the UK?
I absolutely agree, and I think um, that recognition is long overdue. We've both been in the care sector for a long time, and it's something that we continue to push publicly. That's why I'm really glad you've joined me for this podcast today as well. If you could change just final question, sorry, if you could change just one thing about social care tomorrow, what would it be and why?
It's a difficult question because I don't think there is any one thing that can make a difference. But I think we as providers need to recognise that we need to prepare for a future where there's going to be higher regulation, higher expectation, and an environment where our staff are going to be expected and need to deliver more complex tasks. So I think making sure that all those pieces of the jigsaw are joined up to allow that to happen safely, professionally, and to a really high quality so that the individuals who are in receipt of care get the best possible care and support they can. That to me would be the thing, but I don't think there's one answer to that question.
So it's really interesting because while you were talking about that, I think my answer would be use of technology to better communicate and integrate services between local authority funding, between the NHS, between the ICBs, and you almost touched on it yourself between when you were talking about joined up approaches and all the different areas coming together, the increasing complexities. And I really see that answer being technology to integrate all those different areas, provide additional training through technology, provide additional support using technology throughout all those different challenges that the people are going to have to face and are more complex challenges as we move into that future where the lines and expectations are blurred between healthcare, social care, primary care, secondary care. In reality, it's all about wellness and well-being for people to help them live longer, better lives in their own homes independently as we move into a really exciting future. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to record this little interview with me today. Um, and thank you. Do you have any final remarks before I sign off?
No, I think it's been great. It's been nice to, have that time to catch up properly and have these conversations that we almost don't have enough internally either. And it will be interesting to see how Andy Burnham's vision pans out over the coming months ahead.
Well, and exciting to see the first findings from Baroness Casey, hopefully early next year.
Exactly.
Um, Thank you everyone for tuning into the first episode of Let's Talk. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please drop any comments below. Send me any feedback individually. Email me, drop me a message on LinkedIn. I would love to know what topic you would like us to discuss in future episodes. Any guests that you might want to appear. Let me know if you want to be a guest. Please join us on Let's Talk, the Hales podcast. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thanks, Mason.